So sometimes wealth is not the money, it's the mindset. I'm a military kid, but I'm from a industrious kind of business oriented family. So my grandparents moved from one part of North Carolina to the next. They had a farm, they had a jute joint.
Papa! Who this woman?
You know who this is.
She best to leave you alone.
Fine with me. You ain't gotta go nowhere. This here's my juke joint.
You said this here our juke joint.
Listen, woman, can a man dance with his wife if he wants to?
They, owned real estate, very for that time, right? Because people always think the South is, oh, y'all couldn't do anything. No, they were very industrious for their time. So I come from a, conservative family. I always tell that out front. A lot of my family is military or cops. Because in the 1980s, grandma looked around and said, hey, y'all, we about to go bust. We ain't got no money coming in. And if you guys know anything about how they did farm loans in majority of the South, instead of giving people farm loans, they let people farms go bust. And so what ended up happening is our parents, my cousins, my aunts and uncles joined the military. And so that started my mom's great journey, Alaska, Germany, you name it, Tennessee, Maryland. We were moving around. But it also taught me just, kind of like different people, different places, kind of learning on the fly, like how to talk to people, how to interact with people. And then I realized when I started going other places that my family wasn't normal, right? I would say, hey, yeah, my first job was with my cousin's dollar store. Your cousin owned a franchise store? I was like, oh no, he opened his own independent store. He came back from Kosovo and bought all these items from China online and over the phone, and they got shipped and we opened a store. And they're like, what? Or I tell them how we had German neighbors who they're like, your family's so hardworking. We'll sell you these houses for $35,000. At the time, those houses were worth $80,000. So my cousins have several houses in the Fayetteville Fort Bragg area from just interaction, right? Interaction with people. Another thing is our family is big on purchasing land, purchasing properties here and there, putting a few trailers on there and making it rent ready, if that's the word I'm looking for. So when I left North Carolina to go to Texas, and I would tell people these stories, they would look at me like I was crazy. And so then I started going on YouTube. And what I quickly learned about online is there is a sea of poverty stories, sad stories, we struggling out here stories. But there wasn't a ton of people who were doing well and telling people they were doing well and telling them their families done well. And then my grandparents did well. And yeah, the 80s hit us all, but we, traditionally did this. It's not popular sometimes. It's not popular to tell people that. And that retirement can be simple. But what I realized is the more I traveled, the more I told stories, I talked about what I was learning myself, right? The Smartphone Millionaire book I wrote came from me literally testing all these different platforms, putting my money different places. Two things I kept hearing over and over. I worked in Papa John's delivery. One time I worked at a restaurant at a steakhouse. And the lady there was in her 50s. And I'm thinking, when you going to go do something else? Which was insulting to her because she said, well, honey, I own my own house. I've owned that BMW out in the parking lot. I'm not working here because I don't want to. I work here because I do, because I want to.
Right.
So then I said, well, what about retirement? Honey, it's very simple. If you save $27 a day, at the end of the year, you'll have $10,000. Now, I remember telling people this, and people thought, oh, that's not true. It's like $9,988 or something silly, right? Some silly mess people like to do. And I was like, but I kept hearing it from different people in service workers. So I'd have white or Hispanic service workers who owned their own house, had a car paid off, doing just fine. So sometimes wealth is not the money, it's the mindset.
So sometimes wealth is not the money, it's the mindset.
And that's really the things people don't want to hear is like, you could be doing better with your 40K. You just don't want to. Well, you don't understand. I got these kids. I got my mom. I got this. I got that. I got, the black tax and stuff. And you're like, well, let's break it down. Can you put $5 a day over into this?
Y'all hear that a lot, right?
Or can you put $25 a week into that, right? Because you'll look up, and if you really do the math over the course of a year, if somebody's really consistent for a year, it's life-changing, right? Because every time you hear somebody, hey, I had to go get a payday loan, or I had to go get this loan, you're like, well, how much was the payday loan for? $1,000, $500. These small amounts that you should have in savings. It should be somewhere. You should have some gold, some silver, some nickels, somewhere you can sell. Right. And I make a joke about homelessness is not, this thing they love saying is, everybody's one paycheck away from homelessness. Homelessness is not a stair. If you miss a step, boom, you're homeless. It's like 10 stairs. You should have like this gap in here where there's several different things that are in the gap.
Some people like to jump steps though.
I guess they like, take it off.
That's interesting. But you told me a story last night that I thought was really interesting about how you worked in the store with your cousin that came back from Kosovo. And I want to say that was what, the early 90s or something like that?
Yes, it was mid 90s.
So here's a black man that was in the service. He came back home. Now, were y'all in North Carolina or were you in Texas?
North Carolina. Well, here's the thing. That's the one cousin, he was done with service and he saw how much contractors were making, signed up for a year contracting, made triple the money, right? So I guess in the 90s, maybe $90,000 or something was big there. And came back and was like, hey, I'm gonna start a store with that same money. Saved all his money, all of it.
I tell people all the time, savings can really save your life. Your money that's saved can really save your life or change your life, whichever way you want to go about it. But you worked in that store. Mm-hmm. What was so groundbreaking about working in that store?
So this is before, like this is like before maybe 1998. It was maybe 1997. And it was like, it wasn't like the internet was available everywhere. My cousin literally had a book, looked like a Uline catalog, but for China warehouse to order these items. Some had pictures, some had wrong descriptions. And you could order this stuff and it would come on a ship. It would be delivered at your door, and he built this store from scratch. And being 14, I was like, anything's possible. Like anything's possible. Like my cousin done did this thing in no time and it's amazing. And you would talk to kids and they're like, you work for your family? Yes. Like, yes, I work for my family. And what I'm realizing now in the grand scheme of things is nepotism has always been a thing in our country.
People are in the whole world, but
whole world, right? There's some places in Venezuela, Colombia, if your parents don't own a business, you don't have a job, right? Or they even say you're sending your kids out to beg, and people are like, Ericka, that's so aggressive. But I literally tell people, if your kid couldn't get a job somewhere, maybe they have special needs or something like that, can you provide some kind of future for them? Work for them. And a lot of folks don't think like that. So people don't think about retirement. They don't think about their kids needing future work. And so that's the stance I take. And so people sometimes are like, you're talking down to people. I'm like, I'm not. Just literally, let's do the math. The math ain't mathing.